Greetings adventurers, and welcome to the Loot Goblin Marketplace. They say the final boss of D&D is scheduling issues, and for good reason. Even the most enthusiastic group will have a hard time consistently locking down 4 hours a week in which they get to play together. And when one of your party members has to change their schedule because of external factors, it can feel like all that campaign time is about to go to waste if you can't find a new time that works for everyone. Even with the most reliable groups, life will get in the way, but you can always start a new campaign on the side for those that still want to play, while you wait to see if the schedules realign for the initial group. And the reason I put in this disclaimer is that's not how it's handled in today's treasure, which goes by the name 20-Year Friendship Ends Over My Bedtime. The TLDR is literally the title. Warning, this is a long one, but if you want to find out how this went down, read on. I played a druid in my first and last campaign with two longtime friends, Cleric, who was one of my best friends since college, and the DM, whom I was friends with for several years and was Cleric's best friend. The rest of the party was a paladin, and rogue, and a bard. All of us were in our 30s. Our campaign was supposed to be just fun according to our dungeon master and cleric. Our sessions started once every 2 weeks at 8 p.m. Cleric had to get his kids to bed, so he said that he couldn't start any earlier than 8 and the party obliged. The end of the session was not specified, but generally went to 11 or midnight. Me being in my late 30s, I'm not recovering from these late nights as easily as I did when I was younger, even though it's bi-weekly. I like to get to bed early, and honestly, 2 hours of D&D is more than enough D&D for me in a session. Now, a little necessary backstory about myself. I've been a people pleaser my entire life, so of course I didn't say anything about the late nights bothering me initially. I've got anxiety, anger, resentment issues, see the Disney movies Tangled and Encanto, minus the happy endings for references as to why I'm like this. Anyway, my therapist says that I lack boundaries. After I learn what a boundary actually is, I decide to set one for myself. That is, I'm done playing D&D at 10 p.m. I'm pretty happy that I got such an easy boundary as my first time setting one, so a day before our session, I let everyone in our D&D chat know. Me, hey, just a quick heads up, I'm going to a limit of 10 p.m. for myself for all future D&D sessions. Cleric, okay, why's that? Me, I'm not getting enough sleep and I feel like shit the next day and then spend the rest of the weekend playing catch up. No one in the group has a problem with this except Cleric. He keeps mentioning that he doesn't think 2 hours is enough time to do anything. Finally, he says, Cleric, I'm finding it difficult to sympathize as I try to accommodate everyone to be here at 8 even though I'm scrambling with putting kids to bed. And I'm not able to catch up on sleep because I'm routinely woken up at 6 a.m. then chasing kids around all day. Translation, you don't have any problems, try being a parent. I asked him what his deal was. Cleric, because you just said, this is what I'm doing, boom, end of discussion. You didn't discuss it with the group at all, you just did it. Me, it sounds like you're suggesting that unless the group decides that my reason for leaving is valid, that I'm being inconsiderate. This devolves into an argument, which Bard quickly diffuses and suggests we talk about it over voice chat after the next session. The voice chat happens and Cleric is still pissed that I didn't consult the group about me leaving. Me, I want to go to bed or just want to stop playing, you guys can do whatever you want. Cleric, you're ending the game early before the group is done playing. And now that I've let this conversation play out a little bit, I just want to chime in. It seems like the author here is aware that the 10 p.m. cutoff is kind of short, and he's totally fine with people playing without him. There's a ton of stories where people will be like, hey, my schedule doesn't work, but I don't want you guys to play because I don't want to miss out. This is clearly not what the author of this story is saying here, but it seems like Cleric here is taking it as, well, if we can't play with you, it's ruining the experience because all of us have to play to enjoy it. And it's funny that these complaints are coming from Cleric specifically. Everyone else in the group seems to be fine with it because Cleric's the one who makes everyone play so late, so to speak, right? Because they can't start before 8 p.m. and it's not inconsiderate because obviously, you know, they have other obligations. But then when the author pushes back and says, hey, you know, I have a hard cutoff, there's a time I'd like to go to bed by, he's not understanding at all and pretends that he has it so much harder. See, after I decided on 10 p.m. for myself, Paladin and Rogue thought it was a good idea and decided 2 hours was good enough D&D for them as well. Cleric now sees me as a kind of ringleader who turned the Paladin and Rogue against the rest of the group. The argument continues with Cleric pushing me. Cleric, why this particular boundary? Me, because it's my bedtime, I get to choose when that is. Cleric, yeah, but why now? Why are you so fixated on this particular boundary? Why do you feel you need it so badly? At this point, I'm speaking as calmly as I can while internally I'm freaking out. So much my hands are shaking. I explained that in the past, I've always just gone with the flow and done what everyone else wanted as opposed to checking with myself to see what I want to do. Just being a follower, as long as the group is happy, it's all good. I'm now trying to be more authentic and transparent in my relationships, and that means, as just one example, if I don't want to do something, I state that I don't intend to do it. I try to reassure Cleric that this isn't about you, it's about me changing my past unhealthy behavior. And again, this is totally a fair ask. I didn't even know that the Paladin and Rogue would take his side so clearly, where they're saying, hey, you know, we've kind of been feeling the same way. I'm glad you stated it outright. It's important to have this conversation now because for some reason, Cleric is pushing back like it's a very unheard of thing to change the schedule once a campaign begins. I mean, yeah, ideally at Session 0, you figure out the schedule, you hold to it, you're able to do it for countless weeks on end, you know, even years, but that's not really how things are going to work. Both DM and Bard just try to appease Cleric and not rock the boat. Cleric isn't backing down on this, and the longer it goes on, the more angry he becomes, and I'm getting pissed too. At one point, he says, "What about me? Why don't I get my needs met?" The chat ends with nothing being solved. A couple days pass without me talking to Cleric at all, which I'm fine with. Then I send a message to reach out, which goes, me, hey, just checking in, wondering if you want to come over face to face and chat and kind of clear the air on this. Cleric, yeah, I would like that. I've also written some stuff down, just processing my thoughts and feelings. Do you think it would help if I sent it, just so you see where my head is at? Me, sure, if you want me to take a look, I'll read it. A couple hours later, he sends me a 2-page text document of the most batshit insane stuff I've ever read. He starts with the title, The Facts So Far, then itemizes every talking point we've previously had, complete with quoted conversations and dates to mark exactly what took place and when. He then writes a blurb about his thoughts and feelings about each thing I said or did. All of his conclusions were warped and twisted. Like, remember when I tried to explain to the Cleric my past unhealthy behavior? This was twisted into, Druid's comments imply to me that the scales are uneven and all of the times that I have given in this relationship somehow aren't enough. I also interpret this to mean that all that I give in relationship is not even worth 1 hour of time, and that hurts me so much. It starts really getting crazy when he shares his thoughts on relationships. He nutshells them as energy in, energy out. See, Cleric keeps track of the amount of energy he puts into every relationship versus the amount of energy he gets in return. If he feels that he's giving more than he's receiving, he pulls back from the relationship until the other person makes up what they owe. He seems to put relationships on a hierarchy, parents at the top and single childless people at the bottom, because he is a parent. In his mind, he's already giving as much as he can. And since his responsibilities are so taxing and unavoidable, every non-parent friend should accommodate him simply because they are able to. He then accuses me of never truly accepting his decision to become a parent, ending the letter with, maybe it was inevitable with my choice to have a family. I wish nothing was changing, but I have to accept the fact that as others change the way they act and the energy they devote, I need to understand and align with the efforts others are putting into the relationship. My jaw is through the floor at this point. I honestly have no idea what to say. The ego, the martyrdom, the entitlement, him pulling back from a relationship to get the other person to prove they care about him strikes me as emotionally manipulative and childish. That right there is an understatement. I mean, this guy's literally keeping score of everything. The fact that he's cataloging all these conversations is borderline like psychopathic. I don't know how you can value someone's friendship empirically like he's trying to do. I almost want to ask if anyone at this table is actually a friend to him or just a vessel to play D&D, because it seems like he keeps score with everything, and if he doesn't win the argument enough in the campaign, who knows, he might storm off and make his own one to spite you guys. I don't really respond other than thanking Cleric for being honest and that we'll talk about it more at our meeting. Somehow, I convince myself that he's reasonable. Yeah, I know, my own stupidity impresses me sometimes. The day arrives and I'm panicking. I have a habit of throwing myself into reverse whenever people are upset with me. Sorry, yep, I was totally in the wrong. I was having a bad day, I don't know why I even act like that, etc. Only to beat myself up later for not standing up for myself. I remind myself what this is all about. When I'm allowed to be at bed or stop playing D&D and there is no way that I can see another person has the right to dictate or demand compromise of someone else's autonomy. So I make a statement that is so concrete that I can't backpedal from it, or I'll look like a complete moron, which goes something like this. Cleric, this conversation I think is a long time coming. Me, okay, first before we start, I need you to understand I did nothing wrong, I have nothing to apologize for, I have nothing to be forgiven for. He didn't like that. In retrospect, I think he went into the meeting completely sure that I would apologize and just fall in line like I had in the past. Instead, I pointed to the letter he sent me and referred to it as a friendship audit. That's a good name for it. And accused himself of treating me like an employee going through a performance review. I tell him the letter describes a transactional relationship. He disagrees and says that's how relationships are, it's give and take. And that in a friendship that two people owe each other. I have no idea what the last part means, but just a tip for anyone else reading this, don't enter into relationships where scorekeeping is a thing. I tell him that I was still pissed that he belittled me in our text chat by putting my reasons in quotes and comparing them to being a parent. He sees no problem with his actions, doesn't apologize, and pretty much says that he doesn't understand why I'm making a big deal about it, because I have so much more free time than he does. He then complains about his needs and wants again. What about what I want? What about my needs? And I just gotta say, this is all coming from a man whose parents paid his way through college, has a high 5 or low 6-figure salary in his mid-30s, owns a house in the suburbs he'd paid off before the age of 40, and I know this because he's bragged about it on social media, and has a wife and 2 kids. Basically the American dream, and he's bitching about 1 hour of my time. Things continued to evolve. The best part was when I tried to explain to Cleric that he did get his needs met. Me: Cleric, you're saying that no one's accommodating you, but the group already did. You told us that you can't play any earlier than 8 PM because of your kids. We all agreed. That's us accommodating you. That's us meeting your needs, not the other way around. Cleric: no, because first I had to get Miss Cleric to agree to our sessions. Then I'm trying to get my kids to go to sleep, which is difficult and hard on me sometimes. And if they wake up during our sessions, Mrs. Cleric has to handle them by themselves. That's us giving to you guys. So now I'm indebted to his wife too. I really hope this guy doesn't do marriage audits like he does friendship audits, because that would be insufferable. I forgot what happened to cause this, but the conversation takes a weird turn when he starts to talk about all his responsibilities at home, stress from kids, and Mrs. Cleric. Then he says, I haven't really thought about the transition from college student to family man. Just for context, our college graduation was over a decade ago. And that's when it hit me. D&D was never about fun for him. It was all about escaping. He has everything he wants out of life and is still unhappy and has no idea why. I see a man who had the idea of what marriage and family life would be like, but the reality isn't what he expected or wanted. He's in the middle of a midlife crisis and expects the D&D party to be his emotional and mental life preserver. The argument also brought up a lot of issues I've had in the past with Cleric that I'd ignored or buried. I won't go into specifics, but back in college I would complain and talk shit about him behind his back constantly. I would get so angry and frustrated with him. I stopped because I told myself a good friend accepts the bad parts of their friends, just not the parts they like. Now I can't really think of any good points about Cleric in college. It didn't occur to me that I just never liked him in the first place. But here I am 20 years later and my eyes are wide open. Cleric has always been like this from when we first met. Entitled, narcissistic, self-pitying, he seems to purposely surround himself with people who are submissive personalities to feel in charge of the friend group. At the end of the argument, Cleric tells me that he doesn't understand my need to have this boundary, but that he will accept it. Very generous. However, he does so with the most bitter and resentful look that I've ever seen him give me. To me, he looked like an angry little kid who wasn't getting his way, and I could see this bullshit resolve at the edges of his expression. He saw himself as gracious and selfless in the moment, a good friend, which honestly sickened me. After that, I played a few more sessions, but it was empty. I couldn't get over the look and the fact that he clearly didn't respect me, so I left. I told the dungeon master, remember Cleric's best friend, about why I was leaving. DM was my friend too. I found out Cleric had already talked to him beforehand. The DM said that he understood the gist of our issues without asking me my side of the story. Then tells me that relationships are a compromise and that it's not about one side winning and one side losing, both sides win and both sides lose. The entire exchange came off as a condescending dad talk. Looking back, I don't lament the end of these friendships. I'm focusing on bettering myself, exploring my interests, and enriching my life. It's funny how many stories that I've read about friendships ending over D&D makes me think that it might be the truest test of a healthy friendship. I still like the game. Paladin is taking a stab at being DM and is planning a smaller campaign with just me and Rogue. I'm really looking forward to it. I do agree that it's always sad to see a relationship end over D&D, but I do also agree with the takeaway that it kind of brings out something, and you can tell by the way he words things. He clearly feels like he's doing everyone a favor, although he is the one that honestly has the biggest accommodation. The fact that it has to start late and he can't find any alternative for the kids bi-weekly just shows that he's not willing to put in any effort on his end. He's turning a 4-hour campaign into a 2-hour campaign as much as the druid here, the author, is. And the fact that he can't see that, the fact that his reasons are good, but the druid's reasons aren't good enough, just shows how difficult of a person he's going to be at the table. And the reason I wanted to talk about this story is because scheduling issues can be one of the most difficult parts about D&D. And it's really hard to, because sometimes everyone's perfect in terms of playing in game. You know, everyone gets along, the campaign's good, it's the type of campaign everyone wants to run, but then one person has a schedule change in their personal life that they really can't control, and everything's thrown out of whack. And the only time that you really should be keeping score is in game. So thank you for stopping by. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps it grow, and I hope to see you in the next video. Farewell for now.